Welcome to Week 2 module, Know Thyself. Each week I will be doing a short video adding some thoughts and discussion about the learning materials in each week or module. Do note that this is not a substitute for you doing the reading or watching the videos. You will not be prepared for the learning materials quiz if you just watch these videos. This week we're focusing on knowing thyself. Our first material was a survey put out by Heart Research. In the link, it was called Employee Student Survey. And a key focus here was knowing what companies look for when they are hiring people. And interestingly enough, people would think that, you might think that companies or hiring companies would look for just people that did well in a specific discipline area. But what their research showed is that companies place greater value on skills and knowledge found in all majors. So these are more generic skills that a good employee has and then can adapt to that they can adapt to any industry or discipline, etc. Let's also notice here that the companies or the employers focused on demonstrated proficiency in skills and knowledge. And this is a huge thing for you to pay attention to and to wake up, as the next reading says, that it's not just good for you to say, well, I have leadership skills. A company wants to know your experience in those, how you've demonstrated using those in very specific ways. This is one of the reasons why a skills section in your resume that lists soft skills is really ineffective, because employers aren't going to just trust you to say, oh, I have communication skills, I have leadership skills, I'm a good team player, and et cetera, et cetera. Those are kind of a waste of space in your resume, because employers want to see how you've demonstrated or used those skills. To that end, a really key outcome of this research is that employers really highly value applied learning experiences in college. And that is, what that means is that instead of learning from a textbook, etc., that you do some real project type learning on a real issue, etc., and have some feedback from professionals in that area. And that's one of the benefits of this course, is our course project is designed as an applied learning experience. And hopefully I can add some value to you in the feedback that you get and the skills that you develop and the experience that you get in doing your team project in this course. It's very much my intention that when you do the project, and we'll talk about that later in the course, that you do something that's hopefully connected to your major or focus for your career, and that it actually adds something to your interviewing and potentially your resume. Our second focus or learning material was a link into UNT's core objectives. And so UNT also has, actually every state institution in Texas has identified core objectives. And the idea here is that let's say you're an accounting major. In addition to learning accounting, or in addition to being an art student or a theater student or an engineer, there are general skills and objectives that the university wants you to have by the time you leave the university. And those core objectives, and you can read through these here, are critical thinking skills, communication skills, empirical and quantitative skills, teamwork, personal responsibility, and social responsibility. What the university is hoping, and what actually the state of Texas is hoping, that all higher learning institutions are building these kind of core or cross-functional skill sets into projects, into learning, into the entire academic community, so that you're coming out with a broader set of skills which are highly valued. When you look at these connect very strongly with what we just learned about in that research about the kind of skills that employers are looking when they're hiring people. Can you demonstrate that you have critical thinking skills? How do you demonstrate that you are a good communicator besides putting in a bullet that says communication skills? So thinking about things that you've done that illustrate these skills, stories, experience, etc., is very important as you're building your own resume or story of who you are, both in written form like a resume or cover letter, but also in story form or verbal form for interviews, etc. Continuing in this vein of thought is was another article. Hard skills versus soft skills was the third reading thing and learning material, excuse me. And here what we're trying to focus on is helping you understand the difference between hard skills, which this article defines as teachable abilities or skill sets that are easy to quantify, and soft skills or people skills or interpersonal skills. And employers, of course, are going to look for both of these skills. We're obviously not going to hire, an accounting firm looking for an accountant is not going to hire a theater major. This is a very specific skill set. And so they're going to ensure that you have the hard skills there. In that case, they may first look to make sure that you have a B average or whatever in your accounting courses. But then when you're being compared across the board, they're going to look at the soft skills. And what are those soft skills? These are much more difficult to quantify, and especially when you're new in your career, when you're new to creating resumes, people often just list these as bullets that, oh, I'm a good team player. Oh, I have great communication skills. And that just doesn't cut it. It doesn't cut it. You need to have stories. You need to demonstrate experiences, and they don't have to be high-level experiences. I was voted Employee of the Month at Burger King because I trained new employees. That shows that you have leadership. It shows that you're a team player, that you're flexible on the job. So, looking for experiences that demonstrate soft skills is really important. And when we get to the resume portion, do not list soft skills on there unless you have some kind of story that illustrates it. The next article we looked at was the 10 most in-demand skills of 2019 according to LinkedIn. Not sure why these were numbered in reverse, so I don't know if creativity is the number one soft skill and cloud computing is the number one, or if it even matters. But you can see the list here, and the nice part about this article when you click on it is that under each of the skills, they have additional links. So if you're interested in one of these skills, learning more about it, or maybe even figuring out how to develop more of your own skill set in that area, and that's what those links are for. And a very interesting thing here, and this can be helpful to you as you're first starting out your career, is that there's some quotes in here from some senior executive at Facebook that said, this is a direct quote from the article, "We actually value skills over experience in the grand scheme of things. Apply if you have the relevant skills, even if you don't have the right experience, because we're looking underneath the surface for what's really going to matter here, and that's what skills you can bring to the table." And so this is really important, maybe later in your career, but even now when you're moving from maybe a entry-level job or a service sector job into a corporate job or wherever you're headed, that you have to do this kind of storytelling that weaves your skills that you've demonstrated, that you can demonstrate into a potentially higher level job. Like the example I gave before, I was selected as Employee of the Month, or I was selected as the new employee trainer. These are things that demonstrate that you have those skills, and then you can relate them to a different job that you're applying for. I know I'm capable of taking on more responsibility, etc. Okay, And again, please do read through these articles, click on them as you're interested in one of these skills, etc. But these are important things to note, especially if these are the top 5 soft skills that you should have. Time management. Can you adapt? We see this consistently. We're going to see it in the Lose the Resume book. Collaboration, teamwork, persuasion. Can you influence others? And creativity. Creativity is an interesting one that they've put in here. I certainly highly believe in that. Creativity is how you innovate, how you change things. Creativity plays a role in everyone's job. People ask me as a math teacher, why do you go to a conference? I mean, math doesn't change. Of course it changes. How people are using math, how we're teaching people math, the different pathways in math that maybe an accountant uses different math than a business analyst, etc. So no matter what field you're in, there's always change in these fields. The Lose the Resume, Land the Job book we're going to use throughout the course. And it's a good book in general. It is a little self-serving in my opinion, but it has some good, solid information about how the landscape for looking for jobs is changing. Now, while I think that this book is aimed at someone with potentially more experience, you can apply it to yourself if you have little experience or no experience and you're finishing up college and looking for your first sort of what we call real job. When we started chapter 1, and I hope you read this carefully because it is a wake-up call, and a lot of you may be already doing this. You're on Indeed and you've created a resume that you may not have spent a lot of time with. You may not have had anyone review it, and you're just hitting companies left and right, just sending out resumes. And that's the first point. This is that if you're simply sending out resumes, you've already lost. That the game has changed. We've said forever, it's not what you know, but who you know. And the intention here, or the lesson here, is that this is even more important now. That cold call is sending out your resume. There are ways now that you have to, it's recommended that you connect with others in the employment field. LinkedIn, social media is one, conferences, professional associations. You really want to network. We've heard the word networking forever, but you want to network in the area that you want to work in and to get to the job that you want. He uses an acronym here, ACT. And ACT stands for authentic. And this is about you not BSing your way to a job, but being authentic about what you bring to the job and what you're hoping to get out of the job, if you will. So first, kind of really know what skills you have, and if you're missing skills that are important to whatever job you're applying for, then figure out how you get them. You can often get them by volunteering, you can get them by training, etc. The C stands for connection, and this is the idea that, again, you shouldn't be just sending out your resume, but trying to figure out how do you connect with someone. And that might be a connection with a person who does your job, other accountants, other actors, etc. It may be through a professional association. It may be a connection through LinkedIn, a friend of a friend who does an introduction. But what you're trying to do here is not just to find connections, to find friends to add on to your LinkedIn page, but you're trying to figure out a way to make a deeper connection, an emotional connection. So if you get engaged in a professional association, you're not just attending, but you're maybe volunteering or participating or taking on some responsibility. The other thing is, I love this part, this T is taste. Sometimes we get bogged down by trying to tell too much of our story. And what you're trying to do is discern who you are and give people a taste of who you are. And that taste should be reflective of what they want to, for lack of a better word, eat. What is the parts of you that are relevant to this job? What are the parts of you? What is the taste of you that is relevant to this company? And so this is a two-way street. You need to find what your passions are, your interests are, link that to the career you want to find, the job you want to find, and even the company, the kind of environment you want to work in. You're going to be most successful when those links are stronger and more authentic and more reflective of who you are. Now, let's be real here too. You need to get some experience. And sometimes you may get that experience in an area that isn't, the culture isn't the best for you, the job isn't the best for you, but it's a beginning, it's a place to start. Always use your jobs, use your bosses, everyone, and that's the next bullet, as a place to start, as a place to learn and grow from. Many people look for a new job because they hate their boss or something, or a coworker. Don't quit. It's a bad reason to quit a job. Instead, learn from all your bosses. I think they say something in here like if everyone quit because of a bad boss, then 50% of the population would be out of work. The grass is not always greener. You may see, you might have a friend or colleague, a family member that has a job that you really want because of the stories they tell about it. And there's a great story in here. It's the Zach story about someone looking at someone else's experience and thinking that's perfect for them, but not really understanding what drives themselves, and also not even understanding what are all the elements of this new role that they think they want to take on. You've got, this whole thing is about going deeper, learning more about jobs, learning more about yourself. There's a whole section in here about knowing the right and wrong reasons to quit or to look for new work. Spend some time in there and pay attention to that. I've certainly had many bad bosses, and I've had some great bosses, and I've learned something from all of them. I don't think I've ever quit because of a boss. Bottom line, you want to be strategic and think long term. Maybe the job you have today is not the job you want forever, but it's a leaping stone. Even if it's in the wrong field, even if it's in the wrong company, there's something to learn there that can help you get to the next place. In chapter 2, which is Know Thyself, this is about doing the reflective part, okay? And again, a nice quote in here is that most people would rather avoid the truth than face it, especially when it comes to looking at themselves. And then what happens then is that you miss out on opportunities to improve. I have not always, but I've learned to welcome evaluations and feedback. I'm very active in engaging students in this. I want to know from you, what did I do well? What did you not like? What was missing that you think could really help you? Because you are my customer and you can help me to improve. Doesn't mean I'm bad. It just means that there's always room for improvement. So I should always be having that reflective, self-reflective, and then getting feedback from peers. Some of the most desirable traits mentioned in this chapter, again, just really piggyback on what we've been doing in all of these readings. Engaging and inspiring others. Can you manage ambiguity and you have a global perspective? This global thing is huge now. So few companies operate in just one country, and they might have different operations in different countries because of cost scales or talent skills or talent pools, etc. I've been very fortunate to a good part of my career I've spent in international roles, including my last corporate job as marketing director. I actually was based in Munich, Germany, and oversaw our communication and training efforts, employee training efforts for the employees all around the world. And so I highly recommend, if at all possible, and a lot of students don't think it's possible, but while you're in college, it certainly is, that you get some international experience. And that doesn't mean that you just take an international marketing class, that you try to figure out a way to get an internship or even a living experience. Studying abroad for a semester or a year can really change how you see the world, especially if you're an American. We live on a giant island, and so when you move to another place where they do things differently, they speak a different language, even if it's not a different language, it's a different way of seeing the world, it's a different culture, and it changes you. You suddenly realize that the American way isn't the only way. And the bits and pieces you get through media do not give you a full picture of that like you would going and living there for 6 months or a year. Also note, if you ever do something like that, you're going to hate parts of it, you're going to love parts of it, and you really need to spend at least 6 months or a year, if not longer, to kind of settle down and to kind of overcome the emotional reaction to the discomforts you face because things are changing, that they do things differently here. And I think after about a year or so, or 6 months, you start to kind of settle in, and then you can really judge. You know what? I like the way we do this in America better, but I like the way they do this in Italy better, or wherever you go. Okay? Continuing on, that you have to be a strategic thinker, strategic vision. You have to be able to think beyond today in the moment and to think broader. And if you have that, then you also have to be able to figure out, okay, what are the steps to do to take me to get there? How do we change? And this is a huge thing. Most people screw this up because they change too fast. Oh, the future is X. We got to do X tomorrow. Well, I think the Italians have a great saying, piano piano, which means step by step or slowly. Making incremental changes can help you get into a better future with minimizing damage and frustration and angst. Are you comfortable taking risks, and are you adaptable to change? Are you good at influencing others, and are you motivated by challenges? These are things that people are looking for higher level jobs. This book also does a great part in helping you look in the mirror and identify different things about yourself. And so it has 4 different categories and some great tests in here. I've taken all of these and I really enjoyed them. The first one is traits. These are the core hardwired parts of your makeup. Some of these are developed and some of these are just inborn. They're like who you are, an introvert, an extrovert, etc. The drivers are things that motivate you. What is your passion and your purpose? Your competencies, these are really more skills and abilities that are essential, that you have that are essential to success. And a lot of times this can be things that you're trained for. But there also are soft skills that are in that competency too. The first kind of changes that happen to people, they're often not ready for it. And the last part is experiences. This is the story you tell based on what you've accomplished. And again, when you're thinking about soft skills, the experience is key. I don't want you to tell me that you have communication skills. I want you to tell me a story that demonstrates you have communication skills. And the whole part of these 2 chapters, is that the more you know about yourself, the more you know about what drives you, what interests you, the kind of people you like to work in, the kind of environment you like to work in, you're going to reach greater success. Do not think that's going to happen on your first job out of the gate, right? You're going to have some sucky jobs, you're going to have some sucky bosses, but if you have this sense of who you are and where you want to go, then you can keep moving forward. And that's going to be a big part of this class too, is that it's not time for you to look for a job now because you're finishing college and ready to move on. The time to look for a job is always. The time to be looking for the next job is always. You should always be scanning in today's world and environment. All right, I hope you have a good time this week. Reach out to me via email, text, or phone if you have any questions, and I'll talk to you next week. Oh, I'm sorry. I forgot there was one more. We have the video too. There was a TED Talk video by Julian Baggini, Is There a Real You? And it's an interesting video, and he has a really great premise at the end. It takes a long time to get there, but I think it's a great point. And so some of the things he's asking is, what is you, or what is the real you? And so he asks some different questions about, is there a you that's separate from your experiences, or is you simply all made up of all those experiences? Is you an illusion? But he has a really powerful point, and it may seem semantical, but it's key. But it's key that we're not only made up of all the things that happen to us, but the you that we are is also made up of things that happen to us by choice and intention that we create. We have the power to create the you we want to be. We have the power to change who we are. We have the power to change our situation. Now I'll say goodbye again. Have a good week.